joining us. Like, share, and follow.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all being here with us, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, since our first program, we've been talking about the border invasion, and it's kind of why this program began, in a sense, to help bring to light that things that are happening here on the border. And then it seems like after a while, people started accepting the fact of the matter that this border invasion is going on, but folks, it's about to get worse, and it's going to continue to get worse, and it hasn't slowed down. Title 42 is going to effectively end possibly May 11th, unless something happens. And then also there's the Biden has threatened to veto HR 2, which is a bill, a GOP bill set to help increase border security. And then we have over 700,000 plus there in El Paso waiting to storm and rush the border, man.
Forces within a country.
Yeah.
And so we've got a bunch of quislings out there, sympathizers, who are looking at this from the short view, in the sense, oh, look at this poor people or whatever. And of course, you've got this folks that it's ideologically driven. You got folks that know that this mass movement of people, illegal alien invaders coming into our country, is going to weaken us. It's going to affect us. Our tax dollars are already, based on smoke per se.
Yeah.
It's just a wisp, as our government, our elected officials, the bureaucrats have, just weakened us to such a point, man. We're hanging by a hair here, como dicen, un pelito, by a little hair, man.
And what's amazing is I think people, you really can't fathom 700,000 people. Then that's just one area. I mean, folks were increasing, border apprehensions are increasing. I don't even like to call them apprehensions anymore. It's like border encounters, really, because all they're doing is releasing everybody. And so it's just, but 700,000 people, that's almost, there's 1 million people in San Antonio. So we're looking at 300,000 less, there in El Paso. But folks, things are going to happen here in Del Rio. They're going to happen in Brownsville. Things are happening in Brownsville. There's, it's been on the news yesterday, the day before, right? There's a tragic event that happened over there, and then here in Del Rio, car chases still going on, fatalities still going on, and it's amazing to me, Frank, that coincidentally the buses are back here in Del Rio, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's a mass amounts of money that's being poured at this, Manny, and it just kind of it is very frustrating to see this happening. Seeing that our federal government's actually aiding and abetting our federal government.
Yep.
Alejandro Mayorkas, Biden, elected officials like the congressman here in this district have they're quislings. They are traitors to our country. They are aiding and abetting, the enemy. And people will say, "Well, come on, they're just people coming in." They're pawns being used as part of a larger agenda, Manny, to weaken our country. And so it's very frustrating to see that happening. Our federal government is the single biggest smuggler in the world, working with NGOs and people like George Soros and others. But also here in the state of Texas, man, and I can't help but kind of feel, for people, Texas is the last stand. Draw the line in the sand. It's like, look, folks, it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen when we have Abbott, the abdicator, who has, done the dog and pony, smoke and mirror, stuff. Sent people out to the border, and we saw it. We witnessed it firsthand, Manny. We videotaped it live and showed the world how these National Guard troops and a year or two ago DPS troopers on the ground leech on.
And here's the thing, Frank. People don't realize these illegal aliens that are coming through here. They don't want to be American citizens. If they did, they do it the lawful in a lawful manner.
Yeah.
They don't want to be American citizens, folks. And I was in the many of you who watched the program, I was in the Border Patrol 25 years, Frank 30 years. Folks, I've seen it throughout my whole career. That their monies don't help. They don't want to be American citizens. They don't want to, now you may get one or two that try to work their way towards it, folks, but, a small few. But the reality is, folks, the monies go back to the country of origin. They go back to the country of origin for a short while, then they come back, and it's an ongoing cycle. But the thing that's happening even more so now, Frank, is that the criminal element is increased massively here in the United States. Single adult males that are coming through here that are being released, and I'm going to keep saying it and saying it and saying it because I keep getting reports about it. Illegal aliens from special interest countries are being released into our nation, folks. Last year, the year before, this is supposed to be unheard of, right? Illegal aliens from special interest countries. I'm talking like, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from Iran, Iraq, that are coming over here and being released. Not family units, folks. According to the reports I'm getting, it's single adult military-aged men.
And you can see that, Manny. I mean, just go look at somebody like, for instance, Oscar El Blue, who's down in Mexico, or Anthony Aguero, who's out of El Paso area, and of course Ben Berkwam. And right here, even in town, we have Cerro Aden Cabello. Is another guy, takes his drone up and been featured on Fox News. But look at their footage. Look at their footage, and specifically, I'm thinking in my mind here of El Paso, and I spent a significant part of my childhood down there or over there. And it's very familiar to see where these people are at downtown, as they've overrun, they've demanded, they've become very aggressive.
Very aggressive, yeah.
And Anthony was down there filming, and you see in the images predominantly, man, over 90 percentile, bro, young men.
Yep.
Young men, and so that is.
And they don't look like they're starving, Frank. They don't look like they're starving. They're brand new shoes, iPhones, iPads. I see it, here in town, man. It's incredible.
And that's just the, that's just the typical male per se. But you're right, man. America, bro.
Yeah.
And if they have come in for the purpose of harming America because of our lax border security, which is non-existent for the most part. You see all these people out here, all these resources, politicians continually demanding that we need to hire more border patrol agents. What for? Just to process people faster, more people, and release more people. They are going to find each other. They will congeal. They'll gather together, and if they don't have an affinity for America, Manny, if they don't have good intent for America, we have let in military-age young men, yes, but potentially, and I scratch potentially, specially trained, especially the humanitarian process are supposed to be for very specific situations. Now it is a broad brush. Everything now, qualifies as an asylum seeker, as a refugee, as a person seeking humanitarian recourse.
So all they do is relabel everything. That's all they do is relabel everything. They count it as apprehensions, but then when they get to the station to be processed, these illegal aliens claim credible fear. They supposedly claim asylum, and next they're released on their own recognizance, folks. Yeah. And it's thousands of them. Now there's rumor going around, and I'm not trying to spread any sure that our nation is safe, and even to explain to the presidency, the executive branch of the government, that this is not supposed to be happening. That's why people have stars on their collar. That's why these generals have stars on their collars. Not to be kowtowing or yes men to the authorities or so-called politicians, but to take the security of our country seriously.
Man, you struck a nerve there, Manny. With that was one of my pet peeves when I was in the Border Patrol, bro. And I didn't see it, honestly. I didn't see as much of this in the Army.
Yeah.
This tendency for men, grown ass, hairy ass men, to kiss another man's ass, bro. And so when I came in the Border Patrol, yeah, you've got your guys that are there to do a job, freaking hardcore guys, and then all of a sudden you start seeing this class of person who wants solely to climb up the ladder, wants to get a title behind their name, wants to freaking have another plaque for the me wall.
Or secure their position in retirement. I don't know.
Yes, and so what happens, Manny? You saw a lot of these box checkers, men who have no problem groveling at the foot of another man, and that is freaking disgusting. It's not only disgusting to me, Manny, but it's an affront to God, because the only person that should be worshipped is God. And so when you got this sycophant, element within government, where you have mindless lemming order followers, that don't question, that don't use the Constitution, common sense, as a counterbalance. You get folks like people whose names are right on the tip of my tongue, bro.
I know.
That we could throw out there, who you see them now having climbed to some of the highest ranks, and you know that they did it because they kissed their butt all the way to the top, and so that's why they're allowing something like this to happen.
It's a shame. It's a shame, because then you have people that are willing to voice, voice what is right, and stand up for what is right. Then they risk being removed. They risk being put out of position. But that doesn't mean that the fight ends. It doesn't mean that the fight ends.
Geez, bro. I mean, I remember being there. It was so unpalatable, man. It was freaking disgusting. Some of the stuff that would come down, and I remember being confronted, man. Being confronted by my supervisors when I was a supervisor. So those would have been the second line. Being confronted for things that I said. To the guys, to the ground troops, but I always looked at it from the perspective that these are men and women who needed to be treated truthfully. They needed to hear the truth. They needed to be treated as adults. You could not insult their intelligence. And I said it. I was in charge of recruitment as an assistant chief up at headquarters, Washington, D.C., bro, in the mid-2000s. And we spent a lot of time and effort trying to recruit these people, and all this freaking lip talk about, hey, you got what it takes. You got the skills, you got the drive, etc. We need people like you. They come in and you go through this, academy process, Manny, where they try to turn you into an order follower. An order obeyer, mindlessly just doing what you're told to do. And no, folks, when you take that oath to the Constitution,
that supersedes all that stuff.
That should be your counterbalance, and above that, of course, the Word of God. And what does the Word of God say? And so, look, I started out the show by talking about quislings. When you go look up the definition of a quisling, Quisling, man, that is a person who is sympathizing with occupying forces in their country. And by all intents and means, man, perhaps not violent for the most part at this point, what's this invasion, but certainly you see the aggressiveness, you see the numbers, the sheer numbers. And so as they continue flooding our country, and even more people are going to flood into our country, man, you have to, from a security purpose, you just have to think about it. You don't know the hearts and the intents of these people. You don't know what's in their mind.
You
don't know what for
and the ideologies that they're bringing with them. That they're bringing with them as well. I'm gonna throw this picture up here real quick, and then for those on the podcast, are not gonna be able to see it, but it's a picture of thousands of illegal aliens. They're in Mexico right now, marching towards the border on this picture. But I just want you all to pay attention and look at the flags that they're waving. I don't see a United States flag anywhere in this picture of these thousands of aliens that are making their way towards the United States border, Mexico border, and this is my point exactly, because they're coming over here not wanting to benefit our nation. They're not wanting to come over here to become American citizens. And there may be a few who want to live the American dream, but it's always just been a few, even throughout my whole career. But folks, there has to be security measures. And this is what's getting me so angry and so heartbroken of what the patrol has come. Because when I joined the patrol, Frank, I was in the military, you in the military, I swore an oath. I swore an oath to protect this country, to defend the Constitution of the United States against any enemy, foreign or domestic, so help me God. And even when I was in the Army, they would, of course, tell you that if you disobeyed a lawful order, you could be put in prison. However, if that lawful order violated the Constitution, then it became an unlawful order.
Yeah.
And your conscience took over, and the oath that you made took over. The same goes for the United States Border Patrol and Office of Field Operations, OFO, those who are on the border, who are supposed to be protecting the border, who raised their right hand, took the oath, and because we all take the same oath, and but yet the security measures that are supposed to be that are set in place are not being enforced, and now our country is in danger.
So what you see, Manny, of course, is a dynamic that's been throughout human history, bro. This tendency to set aside the purpose God, has you here for.
Yeah.
And to become a selfish person, to go from selfless, seeking to honor God, seeking to honor your fellow human beings, seeking to stand with the higher principles, our Constitution, the ideals of human, liberty, etc. So they go from that selfless perspective to a selfish perspective, and it's human, it's sin, and it's persons who succumb to the tendencies, and what happens, Manny, the tendencies of the more base carnal desires, and we see it in government, in these law enforcement agencies, that if people are not emotionally mature, if they don't have good self-judgment, if they don't have a good center of critical thinking, rational thinking, and if they're not constitutionally minded, that power creates an imbalance within them, and they become power hungry, authoritarian, and then they seek to impose their will. They don't seek to justly mete out, dish out justice. No, it's to impose their will, and we've seen it. I've seen it, man. I've seen it as a supervisor, and how to speak with the men I supervised about that tendency, how it could be dangerous. And I see it, certainly I saw it, in upper management with these people who freaking became insistent, emotionally handicapped, mentally unstable, and mentally underdeveloped people in positions of authority. We used to say it, the troops would say it, I would say it, bro. There's people in law enforcement that have no business, being in that law enforcement position. There are people in supervisory management positions that have no business being there because they don't have the mental, equipment, the emotional development to deal with that,
or even the moral compass. Well, Frank, because there. I don't want, folks, I don't want you to get me wrong. I'm not throwing this blanket concern over the whole Border Patrol, because there are wonderful men and women in the Border Patrol that want to uphold the Constitution, that want to defend this country, and that are sick of seeing what is happening. That's why I keep getting calls. That's why I keep getting texts and emails, I talk to agents on a regular basis that are dealing with emotional issues, because Frank and I used to be chaplains in the Border Patrol, so I still get calls from agents that want to vent and want to talk about things. And so, but folks, my point is that, what concerns me, Frank, is not really always the people that make the orders. It's the people that carry them out. That's what concerns me. Is like, how can they be willing to do this when we all know that we took the same oath. And as a matter of fact, they every so often, when I was on the Border Patrol, I'm sure they still do it. They would send those videos out about the importance of the oath, right? What the oath means to me, what the oath should mean to you, and up at the highest level, people talking about what the oath of office means, to defend this nation and the Constitution. And yet, we see a complete disregard for that oath in what is happening right now. And then my question is to you, those who are allowing this to happen at the highest level. How can you look yourself in the mirror every day and say that you are a person of integrity, a person who cares about this country? How can you look at yourself in the mirror? And then even those who have retired and who wore the uniform and are capitalizing on this crisis and capitalizing on this invasion, how can you look at yourself in the mirror and say that you are a person of integrity and a person who cares about this nation?
Yeah, bro. It's certainly very disheartening, but so that leads into this topic, Manny, and I believe you and I have known each other, since about 99,
99, 2000, yeah.
Yeah, bro. So we've known each other for a long time, And we've always been able to talk as brothers in the faith, but men and husbands and fathers, and to talk about the thornier issues of life, and to pray together, and be a source of accountability to each other. And so I want to broach this subject. But these are the things that need to be discussed. They need to be discussed. One of the things that's come up, Manny, and I'm sure you've seen it, two different interesting, but what I consider in my mind to be connected, issues or topics of discussion. You get on one hand the folks that believe in the Aztlan movement, the movement that this is land that was forcibly taken, stolen, robbed from Mexico, etc. And so I see it where they're commenting, hey, look, they're just going to take back what was stolen anyways, and now what does it feel like now? And karma's of whatever, and so they talk about. So there's a sense of glee and gloating, and I would also say, bro, that there's a lot of folks that share that sentiment, which has demonstrated itself with a kind of envy towards America, an arrogance towards America. I remember when 9/11 happened that there was actual cheering that took place in Mexico about that, bro. So that's a part of it. The other, and of course we've broached this before, and so look, there was conflict. There were wars and treaties that were signed, and so that's part of it. Now, the other recent, or it's been there, but very much heightened in the last few or ships full of people coming over, landing, people disembarking, and as they saw this colonization of their country, what did the people that were living here do?
Oh,
the natives that were here, they resisted, bro. Either they resisted or they try to form some kind of coexistence with them. But
But then some. I mean, when the Pilgrims came, of course, they were looking for religious liberty.
Yes.
They came over here. They wanted to worship God because of what was happening in England, and the Puritans, and they set their own laws, and then they even set boundaries. But the Native Americans that were already here had already set their own boundaries as well. And we can go into this whole history thing, because even at the same time when they came over here, the Native Americans were at war with each other as well, taking over their own lands. I mean, well, not their own lands, but fighting with rival tribes and taking on slaves and
hostages and
hostages,
the
all
spoils of
kinds
war.
things. Yeah, and then at that point, that was even part of the so-called Aztlan, kingdom per se, But folks, there's this innate desire in man, right, to sin. That's why salvation is so important, and so this innate desire that man has, or this innate sinful nature that man has, creates war, creates conflict, creates chaos, and so when the Pilgrims came over, this is one thing I don't understand why people are saying this. So, well, karma. This has nothing to do with karma, folks. Because you look at other countries, they go through this. They went through their history is basically the same. It's just different forms of government. But this nation has evolved and turned into one of the greatest nations in the world, and where this nation became a hope and a beacon of freedom for millions and millions of people throughout the world. Now, do we have some black eyes in our history? Of course we do. Of course we do. I'm not trying to justify anything like that, but what I am saying is that this country has been a beacon of hope, a symbol of freedom for generations and for nations, and that's why everybody wants to come here. But there is also the reality, Frank, that people want to come here to destroy our nation, and violate our way of life. And so my answer to those who want this so-called kingdom or whatever, well, why don't you go and fight where it's supposed to be and originated, and then do something about it over here on this side? But the reality is, treaties were
society that's being attacked, and they're trying to create this unbalance, and to go against the mores, the values of a society that has thrived in its short history. America accomplished so much in its short history, but yet there are forces that are seeking to undermine and destroy that, Manny. So when the federal government is the biggest instigator of that, and when the states is not actively and realistically, really doing something to stop this, but is actually going along with it. And when I say going along with it, here in Texas, Governor Abbott, remember, they were using our tax dollars to bus people out of Texas into the interior of the country. We didn't want that. Yeah, there were folks who were saying, well, good, get them out of Texas. Really?
Yeah.
Really? I mean,
But somebody has to suffer for that.
that's like saying, hey, this gas, the house is on fire, and we're,
Yeah.
we're going to pass this can of gas. Let somebody else throw it on there. We're not going to throw it on there, but let somebody else throw that, another, gallon of gas on the fire. I mean, that was such a ridiculous thing, man. This is our country. Either we are United States, or we're not a nation, Manny.
Yeah.
And so for Texas to be allowing this to happen, it's an affront not just to the people of Texas, not just those that died to make us a freaking sovereign state and country. It's not just an affront to, like, for instance, the people that died at the Alamo, the Tennessee volunteers, the families that sent their volunteers here to fight alongside for the cause of freedom. It's an affront to them. For every man that died on some freaking bloody field in Europe or in the Pacific war theater in Africa, bro, where we've sent our men to die. And I'm talking about the Great War. I am talking about, the true evil that walked this earth with the Nazis, bro, and the Axis powers of Japan, etc., that fought alongside them. It's an affront to them to allow this to be happening to our country, man. People died for our freedom. People died for our rights. People died for a principle, believing in the Constitution and what had made this nation great. And to allow this to be happening, knowing, Manny, knowing, yes, there's women and children that are being trafficked. Yes, there's women that are being used for sick, pedophile purposes here in America, which many of our elites, many people in this country, are disgustingly, into that aspect of using the bodies of little boys and little girls for some kind of sexual gratification.
Yeah, I mean, look,
it's disgusting.
It is, because we look at what's happened so far. More than 85,000 children have gone. They're lost. They're lost in the whole system, and all these processing centers that even this congressman over here, Tony Gonzalez, wanted to one of the excuses he used was so he could keep track of the children. Let me tell you something, Tony. More than 85,000 are lost now in the system that you helped create. It's not even a system. It's a chaotic measure of some sort. I don't even know what it is. There's no policies. There's nothing to follow. It's like just releasing people. But when Abbott was sending all these people to all these other states, like New York and all that, yeah, I understand the sentiment. Yeah, let's get them out of here. Let's get them out of here. But folks, other people suffer because those illegal aliens are getting bused to other, like New York per se. Like New York, for instance, they were getting put into homeless shelters, and guess who's getting booted out? United States citizens, homeless United States citizens, homeless veterans getting booted out. Orphanages here along the border, orphans getting booted out just so they can make room because it's a moneymaker for a lot of people over there on the other side. This is a moneymaker, folks, for a lot of people on the other side.
Manny, so and all this that you're saying, bro, of course it adds meat to what the bare bones of what I'm trying to lay out for you here, folks, is that all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And so I know it's a bit of a cliche to some people, but what we see happening in our country is the slow encroachment, the slow spreading of evil in our country, and it's greed, and it's this sick lust for little boys and little girls, bro. Yeah. You go into the realm out there, away from the major mainstream media, man, and you go and you do your research. Go and look at the censored news sites. Go look at the underground news where they're posting videos of sick, perverted stuff with our elected officials. They are shining the truth on people like Biden and their sadomasochist intents and their pedophilia. And it's out there, folks.
It's all out in the open, man.
You just need to research it. Get your heads out of the sand and other places and research it. And the time for, the little parlor stuff, the little, hoity-toity kind of stuff is over. It is over. What is happening to our country is real. It's sick. It's disgusting. And it is a threat to our very existence. And good men, good people everywhere cannot allow this to happen. So that's my question, Manny, is when the feds freaking fail and they are sellouts, and when the state abdicates under Abbott, what do we, the people, do about that? What do we do? I mean, this is the context, the conversation that needs to be taking place. You know, the time for rallies and all that stuff. Look, folks, look, you can gather at the Capitol and you can do all this stuff and talk. And we're sitting here talking, yes, of course. But, you know, there have to be people that gather. There have to be people that gather others. There have to be truth tellers. There have to be people that are saying, look, folks, let's do away with the smoke and mirrors, and let's do away with all the, you know, all the fancy glamour glitz stuff, and let's get down to bare bones. And I imagine, bro, that and that's what the Federalist Papers were about, and that's what all this was about, was people telling the truth and putting the topics for discussion out into the open to discuss it. And so now, of course, we have to be careful. We're living in an era here, Manny, or at least consider the outcome, consider the consequences, and not so much about, you know, when I say careful, I don't want people to say, oh, you got to guard your. Yeah, look, you got to be wise about what you say, where you say it, because we live in an era right now where the government doesn't want you to speak the truth. We have people who are quislings, who are order followers without freaking a critical thought, you know, willing to follow unconstitutional orders, willing to follow orders that betray the intent out there. But just look at what is happening in America. And look at what they're doing to silence you, to silence truth tellers, to control what information you receive, to control your food supply chain, everything.
And who would have thought that all that stuff would be taking place here in the United States of America, right? I mean, who would have thought and that these things would be happening?
And people had you know, some kind of insight in a sense, Manny, as you follow the natural outcome, as you look at this continuum, you know, the tendencies we've spoken about, people in power to not be able to deal with that immense authority and power that they have, and so they're being frail humans. They allow it to consume them and control them, and they want to control others because they are now controlled by their own lust and their own desires. The Word of God speaks this. Oh, yeah. Then they want to go. Sin wants to constantly enslave others, and so they reach out because they are acting under their father, who's the power, the prince of the air here. They want to reach out, control others, and so that is a natural outcome. And so you need sane, moral people who counter that. But what does that countering look like in an age and an era where they are quick to jump to conclusions? Look at this guy that just shot a bunch of people up in Allen, Texas, bro. Yeah. How conveniently now that the guy's not a Hispanic. Yeah. Although he is, you know, for generations now, they've been freaking indoctrinating and conditioning about all this, you know.
That have these ideologies to destroy America, you know, because to a lot of countries and a lot of terrorist countries, Frank, America is the great Satan, and their whole purpose is to come over here to destroy America and to establish terroristic cells, you know, to basically attack and kill Americans. You know, Thomas Jefferson had said, when the government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. And, you know, and I agree wholeheartedly. You know, nobody speaks that way anymore. Yeah. Nobody talks that way anymore. You know, and then he goes on to ask the question, does the government fear us or do we fear the government? When the people fear the government, tyranny has found victory. The federal government is our servant, not our master. And that's incredible because he is one of the founding fathers, right? One of the founding fathers of government here in the United States. Not the democracy, but a republic is what they founded.
And so that's what we were, you know, talking about earlier, man. In the sense that there are trajectories, there are continuums, slopes per se, slippery slopes. That all you gotta do is just think about. Look, if this continues this way, this is potentially more than likely the natural outcome. And so earlier, as we're talking, you said, who'd have thought that this is what would be going on in our country? Well, there were people who, in their mind's eye, as they studied human society and human tendencies.
Yeah.
Who people like George Orwell, who wrote 1984, bro.
Yeah.
If you haven't read the book, God, 1984, George Orwell.
Scary, it's scary, accurate.
But it shows you, bro. It shows you, the tendencies of frail humans, and with the authority that the people give them. In this case, in this republic, we have given them that authority,
Yeah.
but they misuse it. They misuse it. They get drunk on power, and they are not of the mental and the emotional capacity to be able to control that. That's why they become arrogant and distant from the people. Don't want to talk to the people. Don't want to be held accountable. Don't want to meet with the people. Don't want anybody calling them out, because that is what happens within them. And so it's kind of I don't know, ironic or whatever, Manny. But if you look at movies, yeah, we talk about the border, and sometimes it's so exasperating, and it's just very debilitating, very exhausting to see this happening, man. To see this happening, and knowing this also about Tennessee, Manny, that there doesn't seem to be enough people out there who are willing to give it their all, bro. And that's just my sense. Am I wrong? Perhaps. I don't know. Whenever there's been a huge crisis, America rallies. Case in point, the Great Wars. World War I and World War II, bro, where Americans rallied to fight. The outcomes of their decisions have consequences. And so that's where good, sane, moral people have to stand in the gap and stop the madness, stop the evil from spreading. And there is great evil afoot in our country, where women and children, little boys and little girls, are being misused. Their little bodies, their innocence is being raped, literally, freaking literally. Their innocence is being raped away from them. And our government, Manny, is involved with that.
Yeah.
Our government is involved with that. There's no secret out there that we are dealing with a bunch of pedophile, freaking sadistic criminals in charge of our government.
Frank, like I said, we said this the last program, we say this throughout many of our programs. When you and I first started going out there and looking at these NGOs and looking at this whole operation, I mean, for us, this is like just an overt smuggling operation, and this is what it is, folks. It's an overt smuggling operation, and the cartels are making millions and millions of dollars off of what the government is doing, what the United States government is doing, and these NGOs, they're making millions of dollars. More so now on the drug trade. Illegal alien smuggling has become immensely, actually it's not even smuggling anymore. I mean, basically, they don't have to pay costs for transportation. Yeah. The cartels, they bring them over here, they get released, and the government pays for their transportation to take them to their point of destination.
And so what's that going to do to America, Manny? Throw that video out there, bro, that you showed me earlier. I know you said you wanted to.
Yeah, I want to confirm it.
I want to do a little bit of research into it, but this is on the surface. This is what's being said about that video, and it's a video out of Brownsville, Texas. And of course, look, folks, we already spoke a little bit about what had transpired with this guy that ran over a bunch of illegal alien migrants, whatever. Down there at a bus stop right down the road from Catholic Charities in Brownsville, Texas. And I know some people are going to really get all wadded up about this stuff, but this is what happens when lawlessness, chaos, disorder is allowed to thrive and to prosper. When people get outside the realms. Look, I think of that biblical story, Manny. Do you remember the king who was facing death? And he asked God to extend his life, and he got an additional. I think it was 13 years or 15 years or something. He got He got an additional extension on life.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah.
And horrible things happened to his as a result of that. And of course, everything's within the purview of God's sovereign purpose. But this is a story in a sense of sometimes you get what you ask for.
Yeah.
And so people are they're walking around making decisions based on their emotion. Oh, man, pobrecitos, and all this other stuff. There is an order. There are boundaries which are supposed to exist in our life. God established those boundaries at the Garden of Eden. Don't eat this, don't touch that, be careful because things will happen. There will be consequences. And ever since then, because of initial disobedience, original sin, Manny, our society is dealing with that. But look, here's the video. I see you got it ready to load up.
Yeah, I'm gonna set it up real quick. It's a video that I guess I still want to do a little bit more research on, but apparently from what I've been told from my sources that this is a video of illegal aliens beating up a United States citizen in a neighborhood here there in Brownsville, Texas, and it's pretty graphic. So I'll just let you let me play it here real quick.
¡Viene la policía! ¡Viene la policía!
Were stopped near the school there in Bracketville. You got illegal aliens trying to break into the school to flee law enforcement, running out throughout the community. Then near Bracketville is a small town. It's a rail town per se, Spofford, 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 Texas, where they found hundreds of illegal aliens in these car packs in the railroad. At the rail yards and the train, they got some of them, but then they put out the notices saying, folks, they're gonna be in the communities. They've absconded and they've gone into the brush and they're gonna be in the communities. Last night, my wife and I are traveling. There's a road between Hondo and Divine, and so we're just coming off I-35 and traveling towards 90, and out there in the middle of nowhere. Haitian-looking guy, looks totally demented out of his head, bro, with his pants literally down around his thigh. You know, just some dude basically walking with his underwear hanging out, out in the middle of the highway. And as we're driving out there, there's these, farmhouses. There's residences out there, and the thought was, I hope. People are vigilant and aware, and I hope they're armed and they're capable of defending themselves. And as we drove a little bit further up the road, there was a guy coming out a gate on an ATV, so I just honked real quick. I mean, we're doing 70 miles an hour, so just honk, kind of, at least try to kind of give him some kind of awareness. But for the most part, man, a lot of the folks out there, man, are very capable of dealing with stuff and taking care of themselves.
But it's that thing.
But I just wanted to say, bro, that's what's happening. Everybody's not going to be caught. That's why the got-away issue is
very important.
It's very important, and it should be a great cause of concern. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know the caliber, the type, the morality of these people that do not want to be detected, that are not turning themselves in. That's the dangerous stuff.
But even the ones that are going through the process, Frank, I get a lot of reports that from observers that are saying, out in the public, they're acting like, they need a lot of help. They need money, and they need this, they need that. But then once they get to the stations, man, and you've experienced it, they're demanding, they assault each other. There's a sexual assault going on on the compounds and the facilities, and people are even some of the illegal aliens that are coming with them are afraid for their lives, because they're going to be indentured servants for basically the rest of their life once they come over here.
Yeah.
When I was in New York City not too long ago, talking to some NYPD guys, asking how the illegal alien issue is happening over here, and then of course they were really concerned because their concern is, like when they come over here, he says it was like a handful of PD officers, NYPD officers were talking to me and letting me know that when the illegal aliens get there, they find their own neighborhoods, they get into their own communities,
enclaves or
and whatnot, and he says what's false is that he says the local media reports that the crime level in these illegal alien communities is low. He goes, it's not low, they just don't report it. He goes, that's the problem. He says, so we're he says there's crime rampant. There's rampant crime in these communities. He goes, they victimize each other. He says, of course, it's the powerful ones victimizing the weak ones, and murders, rapes, you name it. And folks, we're going to continue to see an increase in that. And what's that? It was King Hezekiah. It just came.
Yeah.
King Hezekiah is the one who got long life. But then he ended up doing some bad stuff later. But when we were talking about World War II, one of the men that came to mind was Sergeant Jose Mendoza, and I'm kind of going off a little bit because it just came to mind. Sergeant Jose Mendoza, he was one of the he was awarded the Medal of Honor, and I wanted to bring him up because if people don't realize that, I don't know if you realize it, but the majority of Medal of Honor recipients up to Vietnam, the great majority of them were Hispanics, believe it or not. And one of the reasons is because the like New Mexico, Texas, and some of the Hispanic states had some of the highest draft rates, during Vietnam and Korea. And
what it wasn't the rich elected officials, elitist kids who were getting drafted.
yeah. Some were going to Russia, to avoid the draft as well. But my whole point is with Sergeant Mendoza, he wasn't even born here. He wasn't born in the United States. He was born in Mexico, but he joined the United States to become a citizen and to fight for freedom, the freedom that he didn't have in Mexico, because he saw what could happen here in the United States of America. But folks, the reason I bring him up, because it's sad to say he was killed by a drunk driver in Brownsville, Texas, not too long after he got out, of the Army. But he went in spite of racism. I remember reading his story, and he said, "Yeah, I understood that there may have been some racism that have gone on here." He goes, "But the freedom was greater." Yeah. The cause of freedom was greater than because it's not what man can't bring me down.
Yeah.
And sad to say, Frank, we see this being played out. We see what the scriptures talk about, and what the scriptures have prophesied, specifically in Romans, where people are going to be worshiping the creation. They're going to be handed over to depraved mind. We're going to see power being corrupted. We're going to see, and a lot of things that the scriptures have talked about are coming out, in to play right now, and it's a sad thing to say. But my whole point in all this, Frank, is that right now we have the ability, we have the ability to say something, to do something. Yeah. And one of the sayings that I'm not crazy about in Spanish is "ni modo." I mean, once in a while I say it, ni modo. But sometimes that attitude carries off over into what is happening around us. Yeah. You're just like, it is what it is, right? Ni modo, it's going to happen.
Ni modo means there's no manner. In other words, there's no manner of fixing this situation. There's ni modo, it's just the way it is.
And in Judaism, you say meh. Every culture has it, but that's not. Yeah. But thankfully, our founding fathers didn't have that attitude, right?
No, bro. No, man. They saw tyranny, man. They saw the wrong, and they decided to do something about it. They decided to fight it. And so, look, you're talking about this Medal of Honor winner, Mr. Mendoza. There's others, man. There's some. You go research it. Yeah, but it's just understanding. There's a greater aspect here. There is something bigger than the individual person. I don't know how many times in the Army, man, I was called a freaking beaner. Even in the Border Patrol, I was called a wetback, whatever, dude. And so I look at that stuff, and I'm like, look, I would look at the person. It's like that speaks to the type of and quality of person that you are, because we are Americans. We are Americans, and so that's the focus here, folks. Is that what does that mean? What does that mean? People chant USA, USA. What does that mean? Other than some in the moment euphoric kind of, just get swept along with the emotion kind of thing. Yeah. Or does being an American mean that you realize that there's something great, something very, very unique about this country? And when you realize that, then you say, well, what makes it unique? And it is the way that it was founded. It is also the providential hand of God. Manny, God was involved with this. God is not absent from the creation. Yeah. God is not absent from the affairs of men. His providence, providence is another word for his guiding hand, for his will being worked out in humanity, in history, in the rise and fall of nations, even right down to families and individual lives. God's providential hand is at work in each individual person. So what does it mean to be an American? And what does it mean to try to hold on to what that is? And when it is being faced with the forces that are trying to rub it out, the forces that are trying to erase it. And hand in hand with that goes, Manny, as uncomfortable as it makes people, is that There are people that are willing to die to erase that, to kill, to erase that freedom.
Yep, and
there are people that are willing to subject others. I'm still waiting for the freaking mass amount of murder indictments for all these people that pushed that deadly vaccine on people, Manny.
Yeah.
For all the people and the ones that created that biological weapon that was unleashed on this humanity. When are they going to be held accountable?
And who knows if it's going to happen, Frank? I mean, because we look at both sides of the aisle, and sometimes the line is blurred, bro. That line, it's blurred now.
And so this is just, let me just finish this vein of thought here. There are people that are willing to kill to impose their evil will on others. And so what that means is that, in my mind, are there people that are willing to die fighting against that evil, man? We've seen it in our history.
Yeah.
We saw it in our history. We saw it even with the disciples who were willing to die for their message, and they became martyrs for the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
But we are American believers. And so what does that mean? And these are the things you need to be thinking about in your head, folks. You need to be ironing out these issues in your head and getting to a place within yourself where you know what your relationship is with God, primarily through Jesus Christ, His Son, who shed the blood on the cross. But we are also Americans. And there is something very unique about America. And this nation was birthed in blood as a fight against tyranny and oppression.
Yep.
And so those are the things that we need to take into consideration.
And I think, and we're going to close here soon, but I was thinking, I think one of the big reasons a lot of people nowadays, Frank, especially, some of the younger people who are embracing all this socialism and communism, and the reason they're so willing to give it up is because they've never seen people live without freedom.
Yeah.
You and I served in the military. We've been to other countries. We've seen where people's freedoms have been taken away. We fought against communism and socialism. And the founding fathers, they came from a place where they experienced tyranny.
Yeah.
And so they wanted out. They wanted out of tyranny because it's fun. It's interesting because a lot of people don't realize the second part of what Thomas Jefferson said when he said, "When the government fears the people, there's liberty. When the people fear the government, there's tyranny." And then he goes on to say, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny in governments." And so, if you notice, Frank, one of the biggest moves that this administration wants to make is to take away our Second Amendment rights, right? To take away our right to bear arms.
Well, and so you said it, Manny. We've been around the world. Yeah, I served in Germany and I served in Honduras, and in Germany, and I know you were there as well. Yeah. Remember the Polizei?
Oh yes, yeah.
So for folks that have never been to Germany, the Polizei, police. But they are a well-trained, well-armed, well-equipped national police force, and so even when I saw what would you call first world country, what that shares in common is what I saw in Honduras, what some would call a third world country. Yeah. What I saw there, Manny, was the military and how and their huge presence. And not so much in the numbers, no, because government is always smaller than the totality of the population. Yeah. But what I saw was the few controlling the many, and this implied and influential aspects of Polizei and the influence and control it exerted on that society in Germany, and then down in Central America. The few military personnel, whether they were, I dealt with Air Force and the Army, equivalent to the military police down there, but the few controlling the many, and then we've seen it, and you and I have spoken about it on camera and off camera about how the few controlled the mass many in Nazi Germany, bro. Yeah. And we've said, how could so many allow so few to freaking put them on death cars? Yeah. And let them be herded like animals to their own death. Yeah. I mean, how is that allowed to happen? And it's the conditioning. It's the conditioning. It's the societal conditioning, the gradual, narratives and movements and the apparatus moving people into compliance. And certainly, what happened in 2020, 21 here with the pandemic and all that stuff, bro, was a huge part of getting people ready for something bigger, more ominous, more deadly, more dangerous. Yeah. To not just our freedoms, but to our very life, Manny.
Oh yes, of course. And it's amazing you say, because when I was over there in Germany, I was there when, and I've shared it before, I was there when the Berlin Wall came down, and I can tell you, a lot of young people nowadays don't even realize that Berlin had a wall around it, and they probably don't even teach that anymore, to tell you the truth. But this is in 1989 when the Berlin Wall came down, and I remember when the Berlin Wall came down, brother, people, East Germans at that point, they were East Germans, fled Berlin, and I mean, and there was a promise that that communism wasn't going to return, but they didn't know that. They didn't know. They just want to. They were driving their little chopping cars, if you were able to have a car, they drove until they ran out of gas. They ran until they had no more energies. I remember they're showing up in our neighborhoods where I lived, wanting to like some type of sanctuary because they were afraid that this was a farce, that communism was going to come back. We have people, part of our congregation, that grew up in communist countries, and they are trying to sound the alarm because they see what is happening here in America, the same things they saw,
pattern, bro.
the same pattern, and they're afraid that their freedoms are going to be taken away.
And so that goes to that adage, that cliche per se, that history repeats itself.
Yeah.
And either you learn from history or you're doomed to repeat the mistakes of history, bro.
Yeah.
And so look, that's what we're doing here. Yeah, we're talking, but it's within our role of sounding the alarm and then just giving you a voice that I really honestly believe this, Manny. What we are saying resonates with many people watching, whether it's the initial live audience now or as this gets replayed and people share it. It's resonating within you. Why? Because God made you free. He made you to be free. God did not create you, God did not make humanity in his process of procreation for us to be subject to any other man. Yeah, it's happened, but it is certainly every person's right to be free. But God also established the nations of the earth through one man, Adam, bro.
Yeah.
And there has to be order, because then there's disorder. There has to be, control, because otherwise there is chaos.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that the controlling force, government, becomes the master. No, like Thomas Jefferson said, we are the masters.
Yeah.
The people are the masters. Government is a tool. It is supposed to have very specific purposes. It is not supposed to be our God. It is not supposed to be the controlling force in our society and even within our home.
Yeah.
They even want to get into our own freaking homes and control us within our own within our own castles.
Brother,
man.
and people will take advantage of that. If you allow people to control you, they will control you. It doesn't matter how big or weak the person is. Once you give somebody the authority to control you, they will take advantage.
They get drunk on it,
yeah,
bro.
they get drunk unless they're a godly person, a righteous person. But even then, there's that struggle still, the residual sin nature that we have. But folks, this is the reality that we're living in, and so we're asking that you continue to pray. You maybe this will give you some type of our discussion, maybe some insight, some idea of maybe what you can do to help with the retain the freedoms that we have in our country. Maybe one of you out there is listening and has been struggling with about running for some type of office or something like that. Get up there and do it. Or just write letters. Phone calls. All kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff you can do.
And I would say prepare.
And prepare.
Prepare yourself. Prepare your family. First of all, with that eternal insurance, Jesus Christ, and the purpose of that. His blood was shed. To atone.
Yeah.
To atone, because there was sin that separated us from God, from a relationship, and from eternity with God. And so that was the purpose, that Jesus came to seek and save the lost. And what that saving means is, giving us a way to spend eternity with Him, and it's through the belief and profession of belief in Jesus Christ, the one and only Son of God.
And you're exactly right, Frank. And that's why things like this, societal issues, cultural issues like this, that what we're seeing, people that are in power that wanted to take control and take away our freedoms. This is why salvation is so important. This is why salvation. This is what Messiah. The Scripture said Messiah came to take away sin. And one day we're going to leave this earth. We're going to enter into eternity. The only question is which part of eternity are you going to enter into?
Yeah.
The Bible says the righteous shall enter into the kingdom of the Messiah, and the wicked will enter into eternal damnation. And so, folks, or condemnation. And the reality, folks, is that we all need Messiah.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, and Frank, you're exactly right. The best thing you can do is to prepare for eternal life, and because this life is fleeting. This life is fleeting, and but I don't want to be a naysayer or doomsday, prophet. But I will say this: that the Scriptures say that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him will not perish but have everlasting life, and that is the truth. That is the truth.
That's the truth. And in the meantime, we live in this world, bro, and we're not supposed to be, oblivious, and we're not supposed to ignore the issues of this life and of this world. And so you've got to prepare yourselves. You've got to prepare your families in many different ways. Prepare.
Yep.
And be vigilant. And then also, be unafraid to speak the truth, to call out evil, and to shed light on freaking roaches hiding in the darkness.
Yes. And folks, and I ask this too, pray for our men and women in the Border Patrol, pray for our men and women in the Border Patrol and OFO, Office of Field Operations and Customs, all those who are working, and because there are many people, many good men and women who are struggling with what is happening, on our borders. And, I know they want to protect and defend our nation, and folks, it's becoming very, very hard for them to do so. So please keep them up in prayer, our men and women in uniform as well, in the military, and law enforcement. And folks, we ask that you keep us in prayer as well, that we continue fighting the good fight. And folks, if you want to go to our website, here it is, it's tacoboutitlive.com. Comments, questions, concerns, anything you want to talk about, go on there and do it. Drop us a line. And God willing, we'll be here next Taco Tuesday at 8 a.m. But until then, we say God bless you, God bless America. Oh, I forgot to set up our cue, so I forgot about it.
Well, and let me just real quick, man, just as we're fixing to sign off here, look, whatever you're going through in life, whatever's happening in your relationship with your spouse or your family, your children, at work, relationship with extended family, with neighbors, whatever's happening, issues, troubles, economic, money shortage, your health issues. God knows that. God knows what you are going through. And that is why we say, in Jesus Christ, maybe it's not going to be the final solution. What I mean by that, in this world, maybe somebody's wrestling with something. But with Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, it's a different lens, it's a different perspective, and part of what you're going through. It says in the Word of God that the trials and tribulations of this world strengthen your faith. Mm-hmm. And the strengthening of your faith means that you draw closer to Jesus Christ. And He says, draw close to me and I will draw close to you. And so that is part of what transpires in this life. A lot of injustice, Manny. A lot of just sadness. Just some terrible things happen in this life, man. We are very blessed to be here in America. Yes, we are. And but look, that's not lost on us. But there is also the overarching principle of the plan of God, and we're working it out. There's a lot of people that disagree with our American Christian, American believer perspective. But look, folks, search the Scriptures, and spend time thinking about these topics and what's happening on in society, and certainly spend time thinking about the eternal outcomes.
Amen. Make today your day of salvation. So, folks, we want to say thank you so much for joining us. God willing, we'll be here next Tuesday, Taco Tuesday, 8 a.m. here on Facebook, YouTube. You'll be able to find us later on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podbean. Please go to our website, download our podcast. There's also a little donate button if you want to help further the cause. But, folks, we want to thank you again so much for joining Frank and I here on Talk About It Live. And we'll say, now I got my cue. So we'll say God bless you, God bless America, and God bless Texas.